Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of So Chatty with Stephen and Walter. And Walter's feels he's underdressed today because he's just wearing a t-shirt. It's in black. Yeah, whatever. And it is July the 7th, 2023. It's episode 105. Can you believe we've done 105 episodes of So Chatty?
Oh my God.
Oh, don't show so much enthusiasm. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, so what have I been working on? Well, let's get right to it. So I finished the Halloween quilt. Here it is. It's bound. It is quilted. Of course, there were issues. First of all, Walter took a look at it and he said, wow, that's really small quilting. It's really dense. And I went, yes, it is very dense. And yeah, I was a little concerned about that because I figured it would turn out to be cardboard, and it did. It has been washed and it didn't really fluff up, but it looks pretty good. Plus this is not a huge quilt. It's more, slightly bigger than a wall hanger.
And how many hours did it take for you to quilt?
That was the problem. So first of all, I picked a design that is a spider web with a spider in it. And I don't know if I can blow this up much more for you to really see that. I might be able to. Where's the button? There you go. So you get the idea here. I did it in a variegated thread of purple and orange kind of a thing. And actually, I think after I got it off Lucy and that, I think it looked pretty good. But it did take 14 hours. And that's using the computer, okay? For this, because I think I used like 10 bobbins with this as well, because it was a very dense pattern. However, as I said, yeah, it's a little stiff. It's not your fluffy quilt, but it's more of a display thing at Halloween time anyway, so that I'm not that worried about. Now, I will tell you something, though, about dense quilting that you may or may not know about long arm. But if you look over here, this is a bit exaggerated, but it did sort of pull the quilt in more than it usually does into the center. So straight lines tend to be a little wonky. Now, that's a bit exaggerated, showing you that there. But yeah, and that's simply because of the quilting process, because when you quilt something that densely, it's going to pull everything in from the outside in towards the center. So keeping it straight is not easy, but it's a Halloween quilt. Now, this was actually a kit that Stephanie gave me, Stephanie Stitches, when we went to the quilt show, because she knows how much I'm into gnomes. And if you look at this closely, they're all Halloween gnomes that are on this. And it was a panel, and it came with the border strips and everything like that. I didn't follow the pattern completely. I mean, it wasn't that difficult to pattern because you're just basically cutting border strips. But you'll notice I don't have my borders mitered. It did call for that. I started to follow their instructions for mitering the corners or the borders. I had trouble. And then I went online, and I have done it before, but I don't like I like the look of mitered borders, but they're a pain in the butt. And most of the videos that you'll see about doing mitered corners on borders, they show you on a little 12 by 12 piece. They don't show you on a full-size quilt or something that's much larger than 12 by 12. And I have yet to find an easy way to do it, because you really have to fold your quilt diagonally from corner to corner. And then you have all these pieces of fabric hanging out all over the place, and you've got to line it all up. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I got thinking about it and going, wait, this is a one-off. It's not going to be given to anybody. It's more or less, I'll drape it on something that in October, display piece. So why am I getting my knickers all in a knot over mitered borders? Sure, they'd look a little nicer, a little more professional, but it's just for fun anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it. Anyways, it's done. This is a sneak peek at what I'm working on right now. You'll never guess what it is. A lot of little pieces though, because everything is 2.5 inch squares, and 2.5 inch half square triangles. But I'm going to talk more about it next week on the Idiot Quilter. So that's all you get to see right now, sneak peek. It's also because that's all I got done. Okay, before we go to that next one, go back to us. So Walter has not been working on anything because you know that he had a car accident. So what's the latest on the car situation?
Well, I'm still waiting for the insurance company. I have been in touch with them a couple of times, but they're still examining my car to see whether it's a write-off or it isn't.
It's a bloody write-off.
I don't know what's taking them so long. Anyway, I have to renew my rental today sometime.
Did you call them?
Not yet.
Oh.
I will. After show's so chatty.
Yeah, well, you could have done that beforehand. But anyways, yeah, so that's the status right now of all of that. So yeah. So Walter hasn't been in the frame of mind for being very creative. And I have to say,
And I've been filling up my tool shed too.
oh yes, you down there hiding dead squirrel bodies and things like that. I want to kill the squirrels because the squirrels are eating our onions now. They've decided they like to dig them up out of the pot and munch on the little bulb part. They like onions up
No,
there.
I think what they do is they're looking for something else, and they take one sniff of the onion and don't want it. So
Well, they're stupid. Just leave the onions alone. Geez, stupid little buggers. They're still out there sitting there waiting for our tomatoes to get right so they can pilfer those too. Nasty little creatures. So that's what you've been up to. You did anything else exciting this week? No. Nope, that was just the week that was. Really exciting.
no, I seem to be doing stuff, but it's just
Yeah, whatever. We've been
not a haircut.
Oh, thank God. Not a hippie anymore. Yeah, and at least this time she cut it a little bit shorter.
I told her to cut it short.
Yeah. She probably figures guys don't have much hair on their head they want to keep what they've got. So she's probably afraid of cutting it too short because then you'll look bald. Too late. It's already happening.
I mean, I could shave it, but I don't really like that either.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you mean shave it?
Shave my head.
What? Everything?
Yeah.
No, don't go that route.
No.
No.
I'll look even more like a knob.
I'm glad you said more, like, because I didn't. I was thinking it, but I didn't have.
Maybe
to
I got one of those hats, and I'll be a gnome.
Well, you're working towards that, I think. Yeah, no, you got the nose for it. Uh, but anyways, so that takes us to announcements. What's coming up? Well, of course, as always on Wednesdays, 9 p.m. or 9 p.m., 9 a.m., not 9 p.m. That'd be a little late. We have Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen as usual. So that's happening. And yes, advance notice, but it's not that advanced because it'll be a week from this Saturday, July the 15th. We have Stephen's birthday bash pop-up sew day. Say that fast 5 times. And it's a Zoom. All are welcome. I've had a lot of people asking if they can reserve a spot, which I'm kind of surprised at because you don't have to reserve a spot. You just come and go as you please, just like on any other pop-up sew day. Yeah, so I will send out to those of you on the mailing list the Zoom link, but the Zoom link will be in the show notes for this today and will be in the videos for next week as well. So all are welcome. Although I was telling Walter that somebody tried to click on the link because I've already posted it in the show notes from the videos earlier this week. Someone clicked on it today and I get an email notification when somebody does that, when it's not actually live yet. And they had a very strange email address. And I suspect that it is a troll already, or a bot kind of a thing, because they have those, they try to crash the party. And that's why I have a waiting room. So just a notice for everybody, please use your real name when you first log into the Zoom, because I may not let you in. If I see a name I don't recognize, or it comes up like iPad 2 or guest iPad or something like that, before you click the button to join up, when it comes up, before you click that join, look at what it's going to put in. There's a box for what you want to be called, and it'll default to your device name, whatever that is, if you haven't joined before with your name. So make sure you change that, because I don't want somebody or a bot in there causing us trouble. So just don't hit the button real quick, okay? Just read what's on your screen and make an adjustment accordingly so that you can get in. Okay, so that's about all that's coming up. We are expecting for Stephen and Walter live this week. A special guest, maybe. We don't know. Those of you that are regulars on here all know Dana from Regina. Well, she's been traveling the East Coast to Canada, and she's on her way back from the East Coast, and she's supposed to be coming here for dinner on Sunday night. And she told me today, she sent me an email, said, yeah, we'll probably arrive during the live. So we may have a guest appearance, but we won't know that until it happens. So just a little bit of a teaser for you. Okay, so that's all the business out of the way. I want to go back and talk about African fabrics for a moment or two because I got a very interesting mail from Iser. I hope I'm saying her name right. Iser King. She is a regular subscriber, and I asked her for permission to read her email because it was very informative about African fabric. So I'm going to read this to you and we'll make comments on it as we go along. But she says, thank you for the videos of your journey to and from the quilt show. I just learned today that one of my quilt buddies attended the show in Halifax as well. I'm quite saddened to hear about Walter's accident. Buying a new car is such an ordeal. Take it from a car salesperson before and during my teaching career. In turn, I'm glad that he's getting into a CRV. I have a lovely 2010 RAV4. I'm not thinking about an update because the new body style is awful. Well, to address the bad pattern. Okay, so that was a preliminary here. She says, well, to address the bad pattern dilemma, the whole discussion has made my stomach upset. As someone who sold and still sells African fabric, I'm abhorred. No, I can't say that word.
Where?
She's disgusted.
Abhorred.
I'm not a whore. Don't be calling me that. Anyways, neither is either. Anyways, she is pissed off on many levels. I have never purchased or sold fabric from South Africa, so my view may be a bit biased. However, I guarantee my customer service has never reached the lowest level as the person who you have mentioned. It's when we talked about that company that I bought the African fabrics from, Meerkat. The fabrics that I'm familiar with are mainly from the West Coast countries, Senegal, Ghana, and Nigeria. The traditional motifs and colors from the Golden Ivory Coast are a bit more vibrant than those shown from Meerkat's website. You see most of the fabric in African Australia quilt that I was working on during the spring. Wait, you have seen, okay, word out, most of the fabric in the African Australian quilt that I was working on during the spring retreat. Yeah, she showed us pictures of what she was working on. It was lovely. I wish that I could send you some samples just to allow you to see and feel the difference. I do understand that postage will be crazy just for a few fat eights. Maybe we can come up with an idea for your New Year's trip to the States. No charge, just the experience and pleasure of expanding the love of fabric to others. If nothing else, perhaps you should shop for African wax, and she's got in brackets Acura, ACCRA fabrics while you're visiting in our southern states. We have many authentic shops in that region that you may find interesting and useful.
I believe there's a place in Toronto that sells it as well. Remember, Karen Brown featured
from
that
Just
place?
Get It Done Quilts. Yeah, she featured that when she was doing different quilt stores in Toronto. Yeah. She says, one last thing. My quilt buddies are excited that you are now a featherweight fellow. They wanted me to send you pictures of them from our circle. I'm not a fellow because I'm a heavyweight heifer. I own an 1800s model commercial Singer pre-electricity. Okay, so what Iser's saying here, and I've talked to her further about this, she's basically saying that African fabrics that come from South Africa are, well, she's not dealt with them very much, but I'm getting the feeling that maybe they are not quite what are considered genuine African fabrics. Someone else told me they were surprised that there was white included in the kits. Now, we already talked about it being Muslim.
But there was some white in the kit that you
that
had.
I bought too. Because apparently white in Africa, for many of the countries in Africa anyways, is only used for funerals. So it would be, one person told me they felt that those countries would feel it inappropriate to put that color in a quilt. Also, that the colors that come from these other countries within Africa too tend to be very, very vibrant. And the ones I saw at the show from this other company, they had some that were vibrant, but a lot of their colors were more subdued. Now, I don't know if that just happened to be the selection of fabric she had at the time or what, but there seems to be a lot of questions about what is and is not authentic African fabrics. Some time ago, I bought some from Amazon just to see, just to try. And Izer's talking about African waxed fabrics. And the fabrics I got from Amazon did have a waxy feel to them. And I've heard that that's part of the dyeing process, how they put the prints on, and that you do need to wash them and wash that out before you use them. The stuff I got from Meerkat must be a different way of making it, and it was explained how they are made. The owner of the store put up a video about it, basically. So it's full of sizing, but I don't think there's any wax. So I'm at a loss here. I don't know what is authentic and what isn't authentic. I know that she deals with them, so she would definitely know what's authentic and what's not.
Now, mind you, the one from Meerkat, they had a special name for it, right? And
yeah, they called it the Shushwi,
yeah, or something like that.
Shushwi fabric. So maybe that is a type of fabric. I'm very confused about it all. I don't know who to believe, one way or the other. But here, after saying all that, I don't care. And bottom line is, I really don't care, because it's not a biggie to me. I'm not going to go out of my way.
You were
I'm just experimenting,
buying it because it was something different.
Yeah. You know, I don't have any thoughts or feelings one way or another about the quality of African fabrics or the color selection or how they're made or anything like that. I mean, basically, I buy fabric because I look at it. If it's pretty, I buy it. Okay. I don't necessarily have to go and have, like, strictly speaking, I have to have African fabrics or something. They are very vibrant, the ones I have seen in other places. I like bright and bold colors. I do not like the preparation for quilting that they take, because they take a lot more than what you have, you know, the washing and the whole bit, because I don't pre-wash fabrics. So that is a deterrent, as far as I'm concerned, because I mean, if they were really, really something, maybe there is something out there, I haven't seen it yet, it's a possibility, that would just knock your socks off, you know, like you'd go, oh yeah, I'll put up with the pre-washing and everything like that for these. But I haven't seen that yet, in my opinion. For me. Other people, you know, I mean, if you're already pre-washing your fabrics anyways, because that's your routine, then you'll have no problem with that. But anyways, I do appreciate the information that Iser sent to me. God, I hope I'm saying her name right.
Iser.
Iser's probably more like Iser. Yeah. With it. But I do appreciate it. Very knowledgeable lady. I think I'm going to, when I want to know more about African fabrics, I think this is the person I'm going to call on for that as well. I do know there's another lady online who deals in African fabrics. T Quilts is what she calls her YouTube channel, and she has a lot of information on her website as well about that kind of thing. But as I said, I don't think I'm going to delve into them much deeper than what I have, because there's too many other fabrics to pick from out there for me. So anyways, I just thought I'd use that as a follow-up. Now, another thing that's kind of a follow-up. Okay. People who have embroidery machines, and we've talked about embroidery machines before. First of all, many people are very intimidated by an embroidery machine. So they buy one and then it sits for months, in some cases years, still in the box. They've never pulled it out. And we've talked all about people who do that kind of thing on other episodes. But in the past little week or two, a couple of people I know have been having some problems with their embroidery machines, and they've asked me for some help, and which I'm more than happy to do. That's not a problem. The problem is, and this is why we're talking about it, is I think when people get an embroidery machine, they think it's plug and play, and they're not. There is a learning curve because there's a lot of factors. It's not like using your sewing machine, right? Like
Yeah.
when you first got your, I had one first, and then when you got yours, did you find it somewhat challenging?
I see, the problem is I know you use embroidery machine, so I can come downstairs and ask you, okay, what do I do for this, or what do I do
Yeah,
for
but you
that thing?
don't.
No, I sometimes do, but I mean, I'll ask you. And I took a couple of courses too, so that helped. But first thing I did was read the manual front to back, right?
Bingo.
And the second thing I did was I I played with the machine as I was reading the manual. Like, I mean, to go through the menus and understand how to resize, or how to what the machine screen said on it. Like when you bring up an embroidery design on your machine, it tells you in the corner what hoop size to use. And I got familiar with all my hoops and made sure I understood which sizes I had and what they were for and everything else. I did all of that, but that's me. I always do things like that. When I get a new product, if I get a new car, I'm going to go through the manual front to back and check all the parts of the car out, so I get to know every piece of my car. I
You
do the
see,
same thing with an embroidery machine.
I'm the exact opposite. I want to get right in there and play, and I believe the manual is meant for on a need to know basis. When I want to do something, I'm not sure how to do it, then I'll try to find it in the manual. But I think Walter's right. On something like an embroidery machine, especially, they're not like a sewing machine.
Not only that, I have a computer background in that too.
Mm.
So I understand how to copy files from a computer to the machine. I already know that basically from my background for work and everything like that. So I have an advantage to that. If somebody doesn't have a lot of computer knowledge, they may not,
They'll get lost.
they may get a little lost in it, or
Yep.
stuff like that, because the machine's a little bit more complicated than a standard sewing machine. Especially if you've had a sewing machine that's not computer based and doesn't have like screens on it and stuff like that. You have one that's more fundamental, where it doesn't have a lot of buttons and stuff to push. You have to understand that a bit more.
And
Uh,
it's just not a question of understanding that you turn on a computer and read your email. You have to understand directory structures
mhm.
because each of the machines have a different type of directory structure. And you may you transfer your files from your computer to your embroidery machine, and usually that is done through a USB drive. Now there are some machines you can hook up directly to your computer if your computer is close by.
Yeah, like I mean, my machine, my 550E, I could connect directly to my computer with a great big long USB cable, unless I bring the computer closer to the machine. And I tried that, but I found, even as a technical person, I found it to be cumbersome to try and do that.
And
So
the
I use a USB.
And the other thing too is they have a directory structure that is you have to follow exactly. You're probably used to on your computer when you want to save something. What a lot of people do is they have one massive directory. They put it on their C drive or something like that. Or you might have a few folders. However, on at least with a Janome machine, you have to have a couple of different folders already set up on your USB drive, and you have to drop your file into one of those folders. If you just drop it to the general directory.
It won't read it.
It'll be on your USB drive. It'll be there because you'll plug it back in your computer and go, well, there it's there. How come the machine isn't reading it? It's because it's not in the right directory. And that is the one thing that I think frustrates a lot of new owners of a Janome embroidery machine. Because they also in the manual do not make that crystal clear from what I remember reading the manual.
Yes, that's correct.
With it. So, first thing you got to do is if you're having a problem, go back to your manual and read it. But like Walter says, have the manual in front of you when you first take it out of the box and dedicate some time to this. I know you're going to be itching. You want to do your first design. My God, I got to get a monogram on that towel because I'm giving it to Gladys and she's coming over for dinner tomorrow night and it's got to be done. Well, that's not a good thing.
The other thing is on those machines, they usually have a restriction as to what size USB that you can plug into the machine. If your USB is too big, too many gigs on it, it may not read your USB.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember what the limit is. I think it's 32 gigs.
I think it's 32 gigs.
But I'm not 100% sure. It's in the manual somewhere.
Yeah.
But nowadays, you can go out to Best Buy or whatever and get a USB that has 512 gigabytes on it or more, or 64 gigabytes or whatever. And you try and use that one, it's not going to read it.
It won't read it. And you'll think there's something wrong with the USB. No, it's not. It's just the computer. The computer brain that's in an embroidery machine is not that large.
It's very tiny.
Yeah. So you could have problems that way with it. And another thing, just currently, we're exploring this possibility. One of the people I'm helping, she has an extension wire hooked into, she has the same machine as I have, as we have 550E Janomes. And I guess to make it easier for her to plug in and unplug her USB key, she has a little tiny extension cable that goes into the insert on the side of the machine, and then you have it on top of your desktop, the other end, and you can just slip it in. Instead of reaching around, she may have her machine in a spot where it's not as conducive for her to, get it in easily enough. However, I have asked her with the problems that she was having, I said, well, your files are working fine on my computer or on my embroidery machine. So maybe try it with the USB directly plugged into the machine and not through extension. Now you would think, well, why would that cause a problem? It could cause a problem because it's not making the proper connection. Depending on where you bought the cable to, not all cables are alike. If you buy them in a dollar store, for some reason, they might not quite work as well. It may not be pushed in all the way. It may feel like it is, but maybe it's not, or it's not making a connection on just one little thing, and that might be throwing it off.
Yeah, a lot of times when you're dealing with the extension cables, whether it's for your computer or let's say even extension on your, you want to make your cord longer on an iron or something like that, sometimes that extension has an effect on the performance of your product.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about that.
You wouldn't think that, but it can. Not all the time, but it's a possibility. So you have to be open to possibilities. So I wrote down some other things here that I've gleaned from helping these other people out with their problem. Like one of the things is, so now we'll jump away from you've studied your manual, you've got the right USB in, you know how to put a file onto your embroidery machine, but there's things not working right. The first thing you're going to think is, all right, it's a bad file. Maybe when I downloaded the file, something got corrupted. Okay, that is a possibility. So re-download it. And if you're buying them online from any place on it, usually they give you multiple numbers of times that you can download the file. Sometimes it's there for life on their system, so you can just go back into your order and get it again. But try doing that. See if that solves your problem. If it doesn't, then you might want to go delve a little deeper into the design. Study the design by going through each stitching step before you sew it. Now, on our embroidery machine, and I'm sure on other embroidery machines, they show you it's color changes. basically. And they'll have numbers down the side, and they'll show a little color or have a color code. And those are the steps. But you can usually see on your screen what each step is going to do. Now, on a Janome 550E, you have the option of seeing the whole pattern at once or just seeing it at each step. And that's the one that I use all the time.
Yeah, that's one I do too.
And you go through it, because if you're doing something more than a monogram, and both of these people were doing things that were more complex, but let's say you're doing an in the hoop design. Well, there are certain steps. Because you're putting fabric down and sewing around the fabric, there's something called a placement line. And it'll probably say right on your screen, placement, or something like that. And what it does is essentially sews out a single stitch line for where your fabric's supposed to be laid down. And then the next one will be, you lay your fabric down, there'll be what they call a tack down or a cut line stitch. And what that does is goes on top of the fabric and draws out the design, sews out the design. And then when it's finished, you remove the hoop from your machine and you have little scissors and you trim around that. And then probably the next step or later on in the process will be a satin stitch to pick up all the raw edges of your fabric and finish it off very nicely. That's the way they should be written. Not all files are written that way. They will leave out a step. For example, you might get a placement stitch. So you do that, you lay your fabric down, you hit the next one, and it starts doing a satin stitch somewhere on the fabric. Wait. No, you can't do that. Because if you try to trim your fabric away from the satin stitch, you will cut satin stitches. And if you cut a satin stitch, that's it. It starts to unravel. You're screwed at that point. You're going to have to start over again with it. So if that happens to you, and this is why I say you study each one before you sew it down to make sure it's logical. What they've done is they want you to do the placement stitch again, and that'll serve as your outline for tacking down the fabric and where you can cut it off. But it's just going to say placement stitch. So basically you're doing that one stitch twice on your machine. Now this will come with experience. When you've done enough in the hoop appliques, you'll know that when you see it. But that can cause you problems. So for example, one of the people I was helping said, okay, it didn't put the line, the tack down line, in the right spot. So she backed up the machine, or she advanced it, which I'm not sure why she advanced it. But she advanced it and started doing a satin stitch. Yes, it did. Because that was the next step. It didn't have that one step in between that I'm talking about. So that's why you need to analyze what comes up on the screen. So you have an understanding of how it's going to work. Now, one thing that's going to help you out with that is if you buy your design from one of the major sites, usually they include with the file a PDF file that takes you through step by step. Now, some people don't want to print them out because if it's a very complex in the hoop, it can be 50 pages in length. Well, you can, if your computer's nearby, you can read it off your computer screen if you want to, if you don't want to do the paper. I always print them out. I find it more convenient for it. So I take the time to print it out. Yes, it uses paper. Yes, it uses ink, but I find it helps with it. And usually then, right, if you've got those in your hand, then you're probably okay. But again,
you have to follow directions.
Follow directions and don't skip. Okay, it's me without Walter. We ran into a technical difficulty. We had the person come to do our annual maintenance on our furnace. And when we got that person already set up and everything working on it, we came back, continued the episode, and I think I forgot to hit the record button. So I don't have any of that footage. So what I'm going to do now is, it's already into 34 minutes into the video. I'm going to finish it up without Walter because he will be very mad at me and call me an idiot because I didn't hit the button. But there's only a few other things that I want to say about troubleshooting with your embroidery machine. One of those things is if you turn your machine off for some reason, and if there's been a jam with your needle or something like that, the machine will come up and ask you to turn it off and turn it back on. Most machines will resume where they left off when you do that. So read carefully the information that comes up on the display screen of your embroidery machine, because that will tell you, it'll ask you, do you want to resume the pattern? If you say no, then you're going to have to start at the very beginning and try to line everything back up, and it's not going to work. Okay, you're just not going to get it back in the same alignment again. So, if that happened near the last 5 minutes of a 3-hour job, you're not going to be a happy camper. So always say yes, and the machine should pick right up where it left off. Sometimes you might have to advance the needle a couple of stitches or back a couple of stitches, depending on the problem that initiated the shutdown. But in 9 times out of 10, just say resume. Agree to that. The other point too that I wanted to talk about is about bobbins. Now, I'm not sure about other machines, but the Janome comes with about 3 different bobbins, or 3 different bobbins you can get. There's a red dot, a yellow dot, and a blue dot. We're not going to talk about the blue dot because that's a very special bobbin and it's beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. 9 times out of 10, you're going to use the red dot bobbin. That is the average tension for most projects. But if you're doing a project that's a little thicker, it has batting involved in between layers, then you may have to use the yellow dot bobbin for that, because your stitches just may not come out very nice because the tension is off. And the yellow dot bobbin compensates for that. So again, read the manual, check that all out to get the correct instructions. If you're working on a panel project, what I mean by that is it's a project where you have several sections that you embroider out, and then after you've got them all embroidered, you're going to join them together. Now, in that case, reading the instructions that you may have got with your file is very, very important, because it'll explain about that setup. You need to leave the fabric beyond the outermost stitch line of the whole project. That's so you can join the panels together. And to join the panels together, you will need to trim them down to a certain recommended measurement. Usually it's a 1/4 inch, it could be a 1/2 inch. But if you don't have any of that fabric left over, if you trimmed it off before you got to the end of stitching out the whole panel, then you're going to have a problem with your seam allowance. Now, there is a handy tool you can get called Trimmer by George. It comes in 3 different versions. I think the latest version is 3.0. All basically work the same way. And I have done a video on the Idiot Quilter this past week showing you how to use the by George trimmer. So you may want to check that out. But essentially what it does is it gets your top fabric out of the way so you can trim close to the outside stitching line your batting and your stabilizer away. And then you have fabric that you'll need to trim, given the instructions for your particular file, that you'll use to create your seam allowance. And it's easier than trying to sew through a layer of fabric, a layer of stabilizer, a layer of batting. It'll make your seams much more, like, less thick. Okay, so do check out that video if you haven't seen it already. It was this past week's Idiot Quilter. It's the Trimmer by George, available from the Hoop Sisters. Okay, so what else did we talk about? Make sure you're using the right hoop size. Again, read your display screen, important. You may have a little design and you're thinking, but it's asking for a hoop that seems on the screen to be much bigger than the design. You're thinking, well, I don't have to hoop as much material for this if I use a smaller hoop and the design will fit. Well, yes, there is logic in what you're saying. However, the way the machine moves around doesn't just stay in that area where it's going to stitch down your pattern. It may move outside of the hoop if it's too small, and it may end up stitching into the hoop. If that does that, then your hoop is going to bust. And hoops are expensive. They're well over $200 a piece to replace them. So do what your machine tells you to do. It's telling you that on purpose. Okay? Now, if you want to make your design a little bigger or a little smaller, you can do that. However, you need to do it within the software that's built into your machine or through a digitizing program on your computer. But on your machine, it's going to allow you to only make it so much bigger or so much smaller, and it won't go beyond those parameters. Again, because your pattern, if it's made too big or too small, may not stitch out properly and may cause you all kinds of grief. So really the bottom line of all of this is know your machine, don't rush it, read your manual, read any extra files that come with any of the embroidery files that you download, and take your time. Analyze everything that you're going to do, and you'll be okay. You'll be able to avoid probably most of your problems or recover from them very easily from that. Now, there are more advanced tips, and maybe we'll get into those on another day. But for now, these are some basic troubleshooting things that you can use, and hopefully you'll have a good outcome. So thank you for watching this. Sorry for the technical difficulties this week, but next week we'll be back to normal, I hope. Have a great week, and we'll see you later. Bye bye for now.